my vintage. Hi everyone, now we're going to be doing my vintage grams. It is the 5th look in my palette series, and I hope you enjoy. The light's moving a little bit, so I'm kind of okay, but my eyes are really, really squinty and sensitive. It's such a hot and bright day, I kind of get over how gorgeous it is. Okay, let's go. Get that brush fur off my hand. Right, so we're going to start with the eye right now. I'm just going to dip in a bit of both.
Okay, so you get the idea anyway. I'll just wait to start. The point of this is, again, it's kind of a format that wouldn't be unfamiliar from television, from a kind of a magazine show, but she's doing it in a very cheap and cheerful way. And the key thing about Lauren Luke is she built up an enormous community, an enormous following on YouTube. The key thing about Lauren Luke is she was very, very good at what she did. She knew her stuff, and it was the content, it was the quality of that, and her interaction with people who commented on the videos and asked for certain things. Both of those things is what made it. It wasn't the quality of production. Over time, she invested more and more money. As she made money, she spent that on better cameras, better lighting, you know. But she did it from a bedroom. She's a single mum from South Shields in the North East. She eventually got a column in The Guardian, regular spots on The Guardian website, sponsorship deals with makeup companies. She's basically, you know, the modern form of magazine publishing. She started with the YouTube channel and has expanded from there. But she didn't need the studio. She just needed the knowledge and the community, the distribution network. And a lot of her tutorials start by saying this, you know, such a person has asked for a Rihanna look or whatever, a Cheryl Cole look, and so she does that.
The video is really long. You're not gonna see on the TV broadcasting for one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Makeup,
actually.
yeah,
You wouldn't have a 15-minute makeup thing. Yeah, and obviously tutorials work really well online. So I'll keep this in the there we go. And the kind of traditional newspaper video tends to fit into this broadcast format, but again they tend to be more staid. They try to replicate TV more than these other formats which innovate. The second form of online video is what I would describe as edited narrative. Guardian Films is a very good example of this. In fact, film structures generally are probably the closest thing to this. And the key point here is quality. You know, these are quite often like films. They are documentaries. They are extremely high quality. They are higher quality than you would get in a broadcast news programme because it's not operating under time constraints. Quite often they're very personal. And if you go to Vimeo's documentary page, you can find lots of examples of this sort of online video. The key here is editing. You know, it's the way that pieces are put together. There are lots of sequences. So an example of a sequence would be, instead of just filming someone lighting a cigarette and smoking it, you film someone doing that in medium shot, then you repeat the filming just looking at their hands, you repeat it again with their mouths, and you cut between the 3 shots. Yeah? And traditionally you might have done that with multi-camera, or you might have shot it 3 times with 3 different cameras. Online it tends to be the same thing, shot 3 times. And it's useful for repeated motions like smoking a cigarette. So if someone is doing something over and over again, it's a good opportunity to film a sequence. Film it once, medium shot, film it second time, close up, film it third time, close up on a different point. Maybe do a long shot as well. So that's edited narrative. If you've got the time, that can work really, really well. The third type is the video blog or blog, or vlog rather. Zifrank is a brilliant person to look at as an example of this. He doesn't really do his vlog anymore, but he's got a big archive and there's lots of stuff there. You'll see the same, so I won't show you one because you're seeing the same pattern. Rapid editing, extreme close-ups, humour, tongue-in-cheek kind of approach, very much personality driven, very much community driven. The title sequence for every episode is what used to be created by a member of the community. So the title sequence was made by someone else, and he would run that before his kind of thing. And it's not necessarily journalism or news, but it could be, and sometimes it is. The point is that the kind of format, Zifrank is probably one of the best examples of how to do it very, very well. And I would look at examples of Zifrank's video blogs and try and emulate that if you're going to do a video blog yourself. So that's the third format, and then the final format is what we call moving pictures, and this is simply using video in the same way that you would use an image for a story. So there's no sound, it's just raw footage that illustrates a part of a text story. So it might just be a 30-second clip of some tiger cubs that you're writing about, or traffic on a street where there's a problem, you know, and it's just kind of support. I kind of call this the Daily Prophet type of video, which is, if you know, in Harry Potter films where all of the pictures are moving on the newspaper. So those are the kind of types of online video. Next I want to move on to narrative and style and the ingredients. And here I'm going to show you a video from Ira Glass on storytelling. I was going to until it's been removed.
I mean, one of the things I think is really important if you're making stories for television or radio is that you understand the building blocks of the stories. And there are different ways to think about this. One of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to think about it the way that you learned in high school, which is in high school we're all taught that the way that you write is that there's like a topic sentence and then there's like the facts which fill out the argument. In broadcasting, it's completely different. In broadcasting, I think you have two basic building blocks, and they're very powerful, and you can use them as you will. And one is the anecdote. An anecdote is literally just a sequence of actions. If you think of it as just like, what is a story in its purest form? A story in its purest form is somebody saying, this happened, and that led to this next thing, and that led to this next thing, and that led to this next thing, like one thing following another. And some of the things in the sequence can be, and that made me think of this, and then I said this. Like there could be thoughts and ideas as part of it, but like one is leading to the next, leading to the next. And the power of the anecdote is so great that no matter how, in a way, like no matter how boring the material is, if it's in a story form where there's an anecdote happening, and then he said this to me, and then I went here, and then I came downstairs, and I thought, like, what the hell? Like, it has a momentum in and of itself that no matter how boring the facts are, like, I'm trying to think, like okay, there's, you know, if you try to think like the most boring possible story, okay, there's a guy, and he wakes up, and he's lying in bed, and the house is very, very quiet, just unearthly quiet. And so he sits up, and he puts his feet on the floor, and he walks to the door of his bedroom, and again, just very, very quiet. Walks downstairs, looks around, just unusually quiet. Now, like, this is the most, like, what I'm telling you is the most boring possible fact pattern, and yet there's suspense in it. It feels like something's going to happen. And the reason why is because literally it's a sequence of events. Like, this guy's doing this thing, he's moving from space to space. You can feel through its form that when you have one thing leading to the next, leading to the next, you can feel inherently that you're on a train that has a destination and that he's going to find something. And so one of the most powerful things you have to figure out is, like, do you just start with the action, or do you know, should you just start with the action? Generally, you want to start with the action, or you often do. So that's one of your building blocks. The other thing that little anecdote has is that it's raising a question from the beginning, and that's the other thing that you want, is you want bait. You want to constantly be raising questions. So in that little story, the bait is that the house is very quiet, and so the question hanging in the air is why? And it's implied that any question you raise, you're going to answer. And so again, that's another thing you want to manipulate. You want to be constantly raising questions and answering them from the beginning of the story. And that the whole shape of the story is that you're throwing out questions to keep people watching or listening, and then answering them along the way. Okay, so you have the building block, which is like the actual sequence of actions, the anecdote part of it, that this thing happened and then this thing and then this thing. That's one building block. Then the other big building block, your other tool, is that you have a moment of reflection. And by that I mean, at some point, somebody's got to say, here's why the hell you're listening to this story. Like, here's the point of the story. Here's the bigger something that we're driving at. Here's why I'm wasting your time with all this. And one of the things that's very, very unfortunate for people who are launching into the kinds of jobs that all the people who are making video pods are launching into, one of the things that's so very sad, and it's like the bane of my existence, and it's the bane of anybody's existence who does this kind of work, is that often, you know, you have the two parts of the two parts of the structure. You've got the anecdote and you've got the moment of reflection. And often you'll have an anecdote which just kills. It's just so interesting. Like, this thing happens and it leads to the next and leads to the next, and it's so surprising, and so many things happen. You meet these great characters and it means absolutely nothing. Like, it's just completely predictable. It doesn't tell you anything new. And so that's one huge problem. And then the other huge problem is you've got a kind of boring set of facts, or boring story, right? That actually, like, somebody actually has something kind of interesting to say about it. And so actually, I think a lot of us, when we're beginning, we get caught in the problem of, we know we've got something here. We know that there's something here that's kind of compelling, but it just doesn't seem to be coming together. And often, it's your job to be kind of ruthless and to understand that either you don't have a sequence of actions, you don't have the story part that works, or you don't have a moment of reflection that works. And you're going to need both. And in a good story, you're going to flip back and forth between the two. Like, there'll be a little bit of action, and then someone will say something about it, and there'll be a little more action, and someone will say something. And that's really like a lot of the trick of the whole thing, you know, is to have the perseverance that if you've got an interesting anecdote, that you also can end up with an interesting moment of reflection that will support it, and then the two together, interwoven, in, you know, 3 minutes or 6 minutes, or however long your story is, will make something that's larger than the sum of its parts.
Okay.